Welcome back. I'm Michael Ray. You are listening to Thought-Provoking Talk on Dresser After Dark, the latest acclaimed book by nationally known speaker and educator Simon Casey. Dr. Simon Casey is Secrets to Emotional Wealth. Follow your yellow brick road. And let us say, Simon, hi, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me on, Michael.
Oh, and thank you so much for being here. You know, when we talk about emotional wealth, the emotions in and of themselves, people talk about having these good, calm, quality emotions, but that's almost, from what I'm starting to see, and I'm not a clinician, that's something that's learned anymore, Simon. That's not something that just comes automatically because there's too many variables out there in the world to cause it to go astray.
You're right on. You're absolutely correct. Emotions are to be learned very early in life, and we heavily rely on our parents to teach us what our emotions are right and what emotions are wrong, and how we really talk with them, how we express them, how we communicate them. And we have to learn that very early on. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen. In most cases, we learn to shut the emotions down. We learn to shy away from them.
And is that not just for, Simon, protection, because we feel we need to be protected, from the world, from a different person, from a something. And if we're vulnerable and we show our emotions, somebody's going to know how to get in there and affect us.
Yeah, I mean, there's some need for protection, but primarily the reason we shelter our emotions, we try to protect ourselves, is because we don't think our emotions are okay. We don't believe that what we feel is correct. And for that reason, the more we bottle them up and shy away, the more defensive we become. So they kind of go hand in hand. The less you feel, the more defensive and blocked you become.
There's a term running around, and I know you talk about it, unhealthy addiction. You get some of the people who actually should have the world working for them. You get the Charlie Sheens, the Lindsay Lohans. You know, they're making money. They're in the public eye. Everything that they could ever want is right there. But there's something wrong. You know, every time you turn around, they're going into rehab and coming back out again. What is this something? And that obviously those people are exaggerating. But what is that something that we seem to be lacking? What is it what kind of a strength is it that most people just don't have anymore or are not willing to take the step up and create?
I would like to answer that like this, because there's too many people out there and famous. They tend to be very self-destructive. Reality cannot be comprehended without taking into account feelings. The abstraction of intellect or reasoning are important, but when they lose touch with feelings, they open the way for inhumane and self-destructive acts. What I mean by that is that when people don't feel, they become more self-destructive. So there's a direct correlation between no feelings and acting out. So someone like Charlie Sheen, who is a drug addict, on top of that. So addicts usually don't feel. And the reason they don't is because they only learn to feel through their drug of choice. So the more they don't feel, the more self-destructive they become, and they live in this vicious, cyclic world that they can't seem to get out of.
But doesn't it come down to chemistry? And when I say chemistry, obviously the neurosciences are getting very popular today. And there's brain chemistry. You see something that you think is threatening, you get a shot of adrenaline. You see something that you like, you get a shot of dopamine. And, the feel good, that's that addictive kind of from that addictive part of your emotional makeup. And realistically, more and more, if we get people to understand how all of this works, then we wouldn't be so addictive as we are, because if we don't know, we blunder into it and we are at the effect of it, and the consequences for most people are just horrendous.
Yeah, Michael, you're right on. You look at the effect. Most people are after the effect. A human being could be a drug of choice. A relationship could be a drug of choice. Anything could be a drug of choice. So when you're chasing the effect, and I'm sure you heard some people say when I met my partner, it was fireworks all over the place, and after about a year or two, there are no more fireworks. They're talking about the addictive effect. Some people are more prone neurologically to that addictive lifestyle, and they also have it in their genes. So unfortunately, there's an element of truth, but you can get around that by understanding yourself, by stopping yourself chasing the quick fixes, the instant gratifications. And if you stop the instant gratifications, you'll be able to stop the damage, at least minimize the damage to a certain degree.
Oh, sure. And also, when I say protect yourself from people, it's also really, when you come down to it, Simon, it's protecting yourself from yourself, because you may see somebody, you in the general sense of the word, you may see somebody who looks like somebody that was in the past, and you get this reaction, this unconscious reaction that'll trigger an emotion, good or bad, whatever the case may be. And we're living in the past. We're not living in the now. Or we see something and we forecast the future, and then we protect ourselves. And realistically, there are people out there that remind us of things. And when they remind us of things, we crawl into that pattern and that behavior.
Well, there you go. You're talking about behavior. But if you really look at what drives the behavior, Michael, is emotion. We are a product of our emotions. And our lives are a series of emotions. And just like if you had a date with your high school sweetheart and she wore a certain kind of perfume that every time you smelled you had a reaction, and after so many years and you happen to date somebody who happens to be wearing the same kind of perfume, whether she is good or bad or ugly, you're going to have an immediate reaction. Why? Because of the emotion that recalls that time of your life. You can't get away from your feelings because you are your feelings.
Sure, but can't you, Simon, can't you make a distinction?
Or future, everything is happening here and now. So life is happening here and now. You have to deal with your world in this moment. That's true.
No, I completely agree to that. But it's making the distinctions, whether it was then or whether it was now. There's that old adage that, smiling or laughter is the best medicine. And I have found over the years that if I start to get upset, I'll do one of two things. I run down into I have a gym downstairs, and there's Barney the beat-up bag, and we'll go a couple of rounds, and it's his job to get hit. So it's safe, I'm safe, and he loves it. All right. But the other thing is to every once in a while, if I feel myself upset about something or someone, I'll imagine one of the dogs or the cats in this cute little dumb pose, and I can feel my chemistry change. And we can control these things. That's simple if we know how to do it.
True. One thing that people don't understand, we accumulate feelings over time. So sometimes something little or something simple that happens and you have a huge reaction, or you get out of control, or you end up raging over something very silly. And people say, what's wrong with you? Why are you reacting like this? Is because you may be reacting to maybe 15 million things that you piled up in your past. But the most important thing is you cannot help the way you feel. And the biggest mistake people make is they try to control what they feel. And I tell them that's wrong. You can never stop the way you feel. But in fact, God gave you one thing that you can actually control is it's not how you feel, it is how well you deal with those feelings.
Yeah.
That's one thing you can control.
Yeah. No question about it. I've used the example 1,000 times, but if I'm standing in the street and you walk up and smack me in the nose, I can't control that. But I can control my response, my reaction, and how I feel about it.
That's correct. It's absolutely true. But people walk with a chip on their shoulder, and they really don't know how to master their feelings because they never learn how, or they kind of dissociate from them. So they think through everything. The life becomes about pure logic. They try to make some sense of it. But, the feelings are the way they are. When they speak, we're compelled to listen. They have a language of their own. But most people fail to listen. They rather think and try to reason and try to make some sense of it. And the more you think, the more you analyze, the more you lose yourself into it.
Okay, now let me ask you this. Simon, I pick up Secrets to Emotional Wealth, Follow Your Yellow Brick Road. What's it going to show me to do? What am I going to learn, discover in it that'll cause me to move in a different direction with my emotions?
Well, one thing I want people to learn is that there are 6 core feelings. They have to understand that. There's not 25 of them. There's not 50 of them. There are 6 core feelings. And I want them to first learn. And the second step is try to relate. Try to get in touch, because many of us live out of touch. And many of us live in this external world. Just get into yourself. Identify. The minute you identify with those 6 core feelings, you become at ease. Isn't it amazing how we use the word diseased or
sure.
at ease?
Well, let me hold you up. Let me hold you up.
Living outside of their body.
Wait, Simon, let me hold you up.
When you learn to check in, you become more at ease, more comfortable. Number 3, then how you learn to deal with them. Do you act them out? Do you numb them? Do you forget about them? Do you reason? So you learn effective tools to deal with your emotions, and then not only learn that emotions happen at the time and you deal with them as it happens, you actually become a free individual, free of emotional garbage and baggage, so you don't have to drain at the end of the day and feeling beat up. And that's what the book is about.
Okay, now let me bring you back to something. Let's take one of those steps you were talking about. Oh, believe it or not, there's a big white cat sneezing right next to me. Bless you, cat. Okay, so a practical example. Somebody who's read the book, one of your patients, used one of those. How were they feeling? What was the process they used, and how did they come out of it?
So what is your question?
Okay, an example of, let's say, some of the things that you just said. Of one of your patients or someone who's read the book that was having some emotional problems and used some of the things that you just you recommended, and how it turned them around. What did they do practically?
Okay, I'll give you a great example. This just happened 2 days ago in a session. I'm working with actually a physician who is very reactive to her husband. And I told her, you have a problem with anger. She realized. Initially, she didn't, because she thought it was normal, because she comes from an Italian family, so she always yelled and screamed. And I said, what happens to you every time you feel angry? She said, I just get afraid. And she never realized that. It is the fear that made her actually rage. The minute she realized and understood where her fears are coming from, her reactions have changed almost immediately. So she's now able to sit down, actually talk to her husband without raging, humiliating him, and belittling him. Actually, she is able to share herself and invite him to talk to her openly.
So there's one of the most important things in the book, seeing something you didn't see before. It's not so much what you didn't know, it's what you didn't know to allow you to move into a particular place. That's why I think those methods are great. But, and just as you said, how do they work with the individual in actual circumstances to get a feel of what's going on? I think most people have problems, and those problems is not that they don't want to get rid of them or wouldn't work on getting rid of them. It's the process and the steps to get rid of them, and then work on a problem you have instead of the one that you don't have.
It's true. Many people are focused on the issues, on the problems. So when they sit down, and you see this quite often among couples, they sit down and bicker and argue over and over, and they can't seem to resolve. At the end of an argument, of course, they're feeling more angry, more distant, more resentful. So I tell people, look, the problem is a response to what's happening to you. Get to the bottom of it, because understanding a problem is only the gateway to the feelings where the problem is solved.
Now, by the way, I don't think it could have been said any better in any way, shape, or form. Simon, do you